Well, good morning and welcome everyone to Administrator Issues and Updates on March 17th, 2026. County Administrator Gary Schmidt, would you do us a favor and call the roll?
Yes, Chair, thank you. Good morning, everyone. The Commissioner West is out of the office at another meeting this morning representing the county. Roll call, Commissioner Schrader.
Here.
Commissioner Helm.
Here.
Commissioner Savas.
Present.
Chair Roberts.
Here. All right, thank you, Gary. You want to introduce our first agenda item today?
Yes. First is a 2025 Food Security Emergency Response Spending Report and Update. Presenting is Tony Marinick, who's Policy Advisor in the Board of County Commissioners Office. Go ahead, Tony.
Good morning, Commissioners. Tony Marinick, Policy Advisor, Office of County Administrator. In October of 2025, this board declared a state of emergency related to potential lapsed funding of the federal Supplemental Nutrition Assistance Program. Through that state of emergency, the board authorized $100,000 to be distributed to local food banks to assist individuals who might need food from their local food bank because they wouldn't be getting their SNAP benefits. The ultimate recommendation was to make direct grants to local agencies because they were best positioned to use those dollars through that program. We, the county, distributed $50,000 to Clackamas Service Center, who used that funding to serve 3,872 households. Also, Colton Helping Hands received $10,000. They served 1,614 households. Estacada Area Food Bank received $10,000. We used that funding to purchase 8,406 pounds of food and served 2,585 households, including, they note, a 25% increase in the 2 weeks before the lapse and 40% increase in demand in the first 2 weeks of, or in the first week of that lapse. Also, the Sandy Community Action Center received $10,000. They used that funding to enhance food boxes distributed during the holiday season, enhance their senior box distribution program with additional fresh produce, and served approximately 547 hot meals for local households and homeless individuals in the Sandy area during that period. Additionally, $20,000 was held in reserve for what was an anticipated need for baby formula and other women, infant, and children programmatic needs. There are restrictions on what items WIC can purchase. And ultimately, we were able to fill that need through other funding sources, and that funding was not needed. Wanted to come back and give the board a brief update on what happened there and answer any questions you might have. We sincerely appreciate our partners at Clackamas Service Center, Colton Helping Hands, Estacade Area Food Bank, and the Sandy Community Action Center for stepping up during this period to assist individuals and households throughout Clackamas County.
All right, fantastic job. Colleagues, any questions or comments? Go ahead, Martha.
Yeah, I think it's fantastic you were able to do that, and it seems to be a lot of distribution in the rural areas. But I just wanted to mention that I got a call from Lake Oswego while we were doing this because they also have Hunger Fighters Oregon, and that is at 4 Monroe Parkway in Lake Oswego. And they weren't aware of Northwest, the services. So I would just like to mention that I think just because sometimes we think that there's wealth in an area doesn't mean that necessarily there isn't food scarcity. So I would suggest that we put Hunger Fighters Oregon on the list and the Tualatin Food Pantry too. We have portions of Tualatin that are in there.
Both of those entities were evaluated as part of this process.
Oh, good to know. Okay,
Part
thank
of
you.
the rationale behind the recommendations that were made at that time was that those entities would be receiving resources from Oregon Food Bank and other partners. And the decision was made at that point to ensure that our dollars reached out to rural areas, unincorporated areas that might not have the same level of resources and philanthropic engagement that more urban areas might.
Yeah, and thank you for explaining that, because I got a call from the mayor and I was like, well, I don't know. But now I can let him know that actually, because of the urban nature, oftentimes there are easier ways. I mean, they have more of a coalition. So I did notice, again, the emphasis on the rural areas, which evidently was quite appropriate. So thanks, Tony.
Yeah, thank you, Tony. Any more comments? Thank you again. And Gary, what do you have next for us?
Great, thank you, Tony. Next is a potential item for consent agenda that we're bringing to you first for your review to see if you want to move forward or not. It is approval of a personal services contract with Metropolitan Public Defender for legal services to secure or maintain housing. Contract value is $465,761 for 2 years and 4 months. Funding is through Metro Supportive Housing Services Measure Funds. No county general funds are involved. Presenting is Mary Rumbaugh, Director of Health, Housing, and Human Services, and Vahid Brown, who's Division Director for the Housing and Community Development Division of Health, Housing, and Human Services. Go ahead, please.
Good morning, Chair Roberts and Commissioners. Again, Mary Rumbaugh, H3S Director. So we are here in front of you today to talk briefly about this contract, which is a critical component of our newly launched Housing for Success program, which is designed to help households transition off long-term rental assistance by increasing income and building pathways to financial self-sufficiency. By pairing rental support with wraparound services such as employment assistance, and targeted legal resources as contemplated in this contract, we are actually able to address the underlying barriers that prevent families from stabilizing their housing and advancing economically. The specific contract with Metropolitan Public Defender will provide services to address the legal challenges that often stand in the way of securing or maintaining housing and employment opportunities, which is what we want for all of our families. So Vahid Brown, our Deputy Director of HCDD, does have a few more details, as I know that there have been some questions about this contract.
Thank you, Mary. Vahid Brown, Housing and Community Development Division. Good morning, Chair Roberts, Commissioners. As Mary said, this contract in this suite of services is meant to be part of the menu of programming and services supporting households enrolled in the Housing for Success program. And that's a program aimed to assist households in transitioning from long-term rent assistance to a shorter-term supportive program that increases self-sufficiency and helps households grow their own income. So it will be coupled with 3 years of rent assistance, with employment services through a partnership with Children, Family, and Community Connections to employ dedicated employment specialists and mental health navigators through that division. It also will be coupled with a savings program that the Housing Authority will match when the household increases its income and therefore increases its contribution to the rent. And these legal services are a part of this suite of services meant to assist households to achieve self-sufficiency. So the services that Metropolitan Public Defenders would provide through this contract include eviction defense, eviction record expungement, pre-eviction dispute resolution, housing denial appeals, reasonable accommodation requests, debt negotiation, criminal record expungement, warrant resolution, and driver's license restoration. So these are the sorts of legal services that Metropolitan Public Defenders has a line of business in its community law department to provide support for low-income households that experience barriers to attaining housing or maintaining security in their housing. Now, Metropolitan Public Defenders has other divisions, other departments within its organization that receive funding from the state to provide representation to defendants in criminal legal proceedings. The Community Law Department does not. The Community Law Department of Metropolitan Public Defenders receives no state funding, provides no representation to criminal defendants, and whether or not they are funded through this program will have zero impact on whether criminal defendants in Clackamas County or the state of Oregon are receiving public defense. It's a separate department. It doesn't do criminal legal issues at all, and it doesn't receive any of the associated funding. Happy to answer any questions that commissioners have.
Yeah, Chair.
Yes, go ahead.
Yeah, so and maybe we can just bring this back next week is where I'm leaning, but my understanding on this is that, and again, maybe you have quite the shopping list of services, but my understanding is that a lot of these services are currently available today, not through these folks, but currently available in programs. So let's just assume for a moment that's true. That my other aspect of this is that's $465,000 that would otherwise be directed towards other things that this particular services contract wouldn't. Whether that is you know, rent assistance or whatever it may be under the SHS. So I am concerned that if there is, and maybe I can sit down with you and we can talk about some of those other sources that I'm aware of. Again, it's quite the shopping list of stuff. I want to make sure that if there's something unique here, or if there actually truly is a gap between what is available currently, expungement, so on, things like that. My understanding is that's available for not just people that are on the edge of homelessness or not, but so you have any background on that? Does that ring a bell?
Yes, Commissioner Sabas. There are periodic expungement clinics that are provided by different organizations in the community that that do that. They're open to the public, and people can come and have kind of criminal background expunged if they have eligible charges in their background that can be expunged. Those are not available at at need or upon demand. They are at periodic intervals in what are called expungement clinics. I don't believe those are monthly right now. I think those are a quarterly basis, but I could confirm that for you. These are services that legal aid organizations typically do provide, but again, it's the on-demand and available when needed component that's kind of underlying our desire to contract with an agency. So we did solicit proposals from all qualified providers of legal services in the regional pool of qualified providers under SHS. 2 organizations responded when we reviewed them. Currently, in our programs, this menu of services is not generally available to folks in the community who are enrolled in our programs who need these kinds of services on demand at no cost. They can be waitlisted for them. They can wait for an expungement clinic for that narrow component of this menu of services. But we do believe that these are services that needed to be procured specifically for the program.
Okay, so I appreciate that clarification. I mean, I want to just test that with what I've learned here recently, but I can't do that here today. But if this is $230,000 a year, right? 465 divided by 2. That's not very much money. I mean, is it going to make the distance, or is that on demand really a less of a need and infrequent versus the ongoing services that are out there today?
Yeah, this is really specific to the folks enrolled in the Housing for Success program, and that's not a terribly large cohort of families. We have slots in that program budgeted for 135 households. We went through all enrolled households in the Regional Long-Term Rent Assistance Program, determined who was population B. These are folks who weren't chronically homeless with disabling conditions at the time they received rent assistance. That was the first step. And then a separate layer of screening was done for anyone who was over 65 and disabled was excluded from consideration. So we're looking at households that did not have a history of homelessness, did not have disabilities in the household, were not elderly, and had the ability to earn or increase their earned income. And that's about 110 at the moment that we're looking at enrolling. So it would be within that subset of 135 slots of people in the program that Metropolitan Public Defenders would be dedicating their services to.
Okay. The other thing I want to just share too is that, I know of someone who received a number of these services from these sources, right, that I'm talking about, that I learned of, and she's doing way better. I mean, she got her, got her driver's license. She got her record expunged, so she's doing really well. So I know those services are out there. And again, if there can be more dollars, that go towards both population A and B for other services, I just kind of wonder if there's how much duplicative aspect of this there is. And I understand the on-call piece, so I appreciate that bit of information. Do we have a means of gauging that? I mean, let's just say they're all, I mean, are they available all the time, or are they just have just as long a waiting list as anyone else? Do we know?
It's a good question, Commissioner Sabas. I don't know off the top of my head. But from the team that put together the Housing for Success program, it was not deemed this was available enough in the community that we would be able to provide the specific support to these households to address these barriers in a timely fashion. So the rent assistance is not long-lived, and there's a 3-year time frame to really provide dedicated support to these households to achieve self-sufficiency. That's the goal. Legal services on a contract basis for folks who are experiencing or at risk of experiencing homelessness are typical. They typically are contracted for in our industry, so to speak, in the homelessness response systems. Metropolitan Public Defender's contracts with Multnomah County. The Oregon Law Center has contracted with us in the past. They contract with Multnomah and Washington County. Legal Aid Services of Oregon often provides similar suites of programming. But in order for folks enrolled in our systems to access those services, typically it is through a contract basis. They aren't publicly available at the scale of need.
Okay. Appreciate your good work. And Chair, Board, I just asked for, maybe give me a little bit more time to chase this down. Again, I know that my worry, I'll just tell you, had a lengthy conversation, is that, I think we're all concerned that will the voters or not renew the SHS supportive services? And if not, then, we're facing some cliffs, and this would just be another cliff.
And that is exactly why the Housing for Success program was designed, was to get ahead of that cliff, right, and to really bend the cost curve on these long-term programs.
Always appreciate it, Vahid. Appreciate you.
Thank you. Martha?
Yeah, I had a question. Who was the workforce component again? It was community and children, family, and community
Connections.
connections.
So our own division under H3S CFCC.
Okay,
Yes.
so how are you managing then that workforce piece? Are you getting people into the community college? Are you assessing what training they need? Are you working with WorkSource Oregon, which is our kind of hub here for that? So that's what they would be doing, is helping to coordinate with all those other
Yes, to all of the
entities.
above.
Really? Okay,
Yep.
great. That's all. And that's an internal function too. Okay, I just wanted to know where the workforce connection was going to be. Thank you.
Commissioner Hill?
Yeah, thank you for the presentation, Vahid. Do the other counties regionally contribute to this fund as well?
The housing for,
The Metropolitan Public Defender.
Yes, Metropolitan Public Defender does contract with Multnomah County's Homelessness Services Department.
Washington County too?
I don't know.
Okay, interesting. Okay. And then just for my own, help here, Housing for Success, is that a regional or is that Clackamas County only?
That's a Clackamas County
That's our
program.
own program, correct?
Yes.
And then to follow up with what Martha was talking about, workforce, which kind of really has nothing to do with what we're talking about here, but just because I hear the jobs reports on a very regular basis, is there a difficulty in placing people in jobs with the lack of jobs that are available out there? Are we running into kind of a brick wall?
That's a good question. I don't have kind of
The
outcome
data, I know, yeah.
to
I know.
answer that
It's
question.
a different topic, but I would be curious in a future meeting to know those numbers.
I would like to see.
Yeah.
And I would say exactly what we're trying to address is what actually, before whether there's a job available or not, Commissioner, if you don't have a driver's license, you're not getting
You're
a
going
job.
to get a job, exactly.
If you have a criminal background that we can't expunge, you're likely not getting a job.
Right.
And so we are not going to advance these individuals who can actually contribute to this community
Right.
if we're not breaking down these barriers.
Okay, cool, thank you.
Okay.
Any other comments?
Just Chair, I don't know if we need a motion, but can we bring this back? Just give me a little bit more time to do some research on this. I mean, it sounds, I think there's been a good case here made. I just want to just double back.
Yeah, is that looking for my colleagues? I don't think we need a vote, but can
Yeah,
I get
I
a head
would-
nod? It's all right to.
Yeah, if we.
Well, I'm fine to put it on the agenda for Thursday. I don't, the fact that this is also this is the on-call, as you say, the on-call needs, it's not a ton of money, but it's very necessary money to get upstream of the problems. So I don't know. What other information are you looking for?
I just got to sit down and.
Okay.
And
Okay.
meet with that. I'm not sure I can get that done by Thursday, but
Okay.
I can get it done by Tuesday. Pretty confident about that. But those services, my point is, those services are out there today, right? And the person I know that I just mentioned who's been successful with that. But as Vahid's arguing here, that this is has more of an on-call element to it. And I'm hoping to hear if there is any backlog currently. So if it truly is on-call, let's just say the waiting list is the same, then it's all it is this is an expense. It's not necessarily a solution if the waiting list is the same, right?
Well, this would be for dedicated staff for this program. So these would, this contract would fund, just to answer that question, it wouldn't fund access to their wait list. It would fund dedicated capacity to enroll our households in these legal services.
Okay. So what you're saying is that they're going to hire an FTE to do this?
Correct? Yes, the packet, I believe, has that information in the budget, but I don't have that in front of me, Commissioner Savas.
Okay. Yeah, I just appreciate a little bit more time to hammer this out.
Martha, where you
Colleagues.
at?
Well, if you can get it done by Tuesday next week, then it would be on the following Thursday. Is that going to hold you guys up to the point where it'd be, I mean, I'm looking at your faces.
There's
but-
no business meeting next week, so
Right.
this would be April 2nd.
Right, right. We're pushing it
Yeah,
out to next
so
month.
I think we ought to move ahead then. Okay, I'm sorry, Paul, but I think we got to get the answers to the questions, but we can always revisit. But at least now why don't we just move forward with
You can
it?
just stay up till midnight and read now.
Yeah.
Oh, it's not me, it's my source.
Oh, okay.
All right.
Yeah,
So it
that's
sounds
right.
like we have probably a consensus to go ahead and put it on the agenda.
Got it. All right. Thank you.
Yep, and we will follow up, Commissioners.
Okay, I
We'll
think
follow
we
up
can
with
do-
everyone with some of these answers as well.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, Gary, what do you have
Okay,
next?
thank you. Next is another item that is on your agenda for this Thursday. It is to prep you for that. It is approval of a boundary change proposal for the annexation of the city of Gladstone to Clackamas County Fire District Number 1. There are no county general funds involved. Jeff Munns, Assistant County Counsel, will present. Go ahead.
Yes, thank you, and good morning. This is one of the more unusual boundary changes that you'll see. Normally, it's an annexation of a property owner coming into a district. This is one where Clackamas Fire District is annexing the entire city of Gladstone. And that process is initiated by the city itself in voting to approve that and put it on the ballot. And that was on the ballot last fall in November and was approved by the city. And then the city, after they certified the results and passed another resolution to approve the annexation into the fire district board took it up and approved that, and then got it to us, which then puts it on your agenda to review and approve. I'll also note that this one has a rather short timeline because we have to, if we approve it on Thursday, we have to get it to the Department of Revenue and get the map and legal description approved by March 31st so that the fire district can assess the area within the city of Gladstone starting on July 1st. So we got it in just the nick of time, I guess we could say, and put on your agenda for this annexation. Happy to answer any questions you have about the process or your role in the review.
Any questions? Hearing none, it looks like you have your direction.
All right, thank you.
And thank you very much, Mr. Munns. Gary?
Thank you. Next is Budget Committee applicant interviews. So Commissioners, as you know, Jan Lee resigned from the Budget Committee. There's an open recruitment to fill the remainder of her term. That recruitment is still open through today. So if anyone wants to apply, you have until today. Up till now, there are 4 applicants so far for the position. But again, the position closes today. This is a committee that you would like to interview the candidates before you make a final decision. So today I'd like to ask which one of you would like to interview the candidates for the open budget committee position after it closes today. There are at least 4 candidates, and I ask not more than 2 of you so we don't have a quorum.
Chair, this is something I've always taken a keen interest in. I think no doubt here, probably no argument that there's probably nothing more important than the budget that we face and the challenges we face. And so I put a high level of interest in this to make sure we pick the person that can bring the most to this to the budget committee. So I would like to be one of those people to do the interview.
All right. Does anybody else have an interest in doing this?
When are the interviews taking place, Gary?
We will make them work that fits your calendar
Okay.
over the next few weeks.
I'd be happy to do it if you need another volunteer. We just have really busy schedules coming up, so.
All right.
So Commissioner Hellman, Commissioner Savas?
Yep.
Okay, great. No motion needed. I will note that, and we'll work on your calendars after it closes today to schedule those interviews. Thank you. Next is review of your board business meeting agenda for this Thursday, March 19, 2026. You will have public communication, a presentation from County Clerk McMullen on an update of the May 19, 2026 primary election informational presentation, a public hearing on the City of Gladstone annexation to Clackamas Fire District, as you just heard, a consent agenda for the Board of County Commissioners, and that is it. If you have any question on these items, if you'd please let me know prior to Thursday, and I will answer it for you, or have staff in the room to answer it for you. As I mentioned, there's no business meeting next week because the board is on recess, so this will be your last meeting for the month of March. Thank you. The last item today is Commissioner Communications.
All right. And it looks like we're also going to be back here at 1:30 for a policy session.
Yes.
Correct.
Absolutely.
Commissioner Communication, Commissioner Schrader.
Well, let's just say happy St. Patrick's Day. I have a little Irish in me, as well as the Italian. So I remember my dad always used to wear his shamrock and his Aaron go bra, go Ireland pin every St. Patrick's Day. So I hope you all have a chance to get some real authentic fish and chips tonight and raise a pint of Guinness, if you really want to do it. I think there's going to be celebrations. One of the things that I've been newly appointed to is all issues concerning garbage collection, okay, on the Metro Committee, which is turning out to be more fascinating than I originally thought, because one of the conversations, I was talking to one of the lobbyists the other night from the haulers, and evidently, our friends at Metro are thinking about actually maybe taking some of those transfer stations in-house and having it, rather than contracting out with people who, who are in the business and know how to, and have done it and have structured that. That has been part of the discussions, and I don't know how you, colleagues, you feel about it, but to me, that just kind of seems like scope creep. So I'm a little worried about that because, Metro's expertise was the zoo, contracting out for for garbage, renewal, and then of course it morphed into land use, transportation, have been key for years, and then housing. So I worry a little bit that although I think a regional approach is actually a good idea in multiple ways, I do worry a little bit about scope creep and the level of expertise that would have to be built up in the organization in order to do that. So with your permission, I'm going to basically say, hey, I don't really think that's a good idea at this point. So that's the news I have there, all things Metro. And that's about it for the day. I'm going to be meeting with the Fair Board actually coming up too.
Oh.
So see how they're doing. So, all right?
Thank you, Martha.
Okay.
Commissioner Savas?
I'll just build a little bit on what Commissioner Schrader just raised. In my business experience, I never really took on much more until I really had, the machinery infrastructure hammered down to where I was doing a great job, and I had the capacity to take on more, and I had a track record of, maintaining what I was the base of my work, that I could do it well, and I think that right now, not critical of my colleagues at Metro, as much as I am looking at the status right now of some of the challenges we face, which are pretty severe. Challenges such as this housing crisis, which, obviously, appreciate Metro's involvement in the SHS. Our transportation crisis, which is not getting any better, whether you look at, I don't care what mode you look at, most especially surface transportation and transit. Transit in particular, we're not doing so good on. So I wonder if we are too spread out to do what we are charged with doing before tackling or taking on other aspects of it. So I think we need to prioritize. If I was, if I was sitting at the dais at Metro Council, I would say, geez, I think, what's our core mission? how we doing? And if we're not doing so well, what it's going to take to get there, and focus on those. And then lower priority issues, maybe they can be tackled at some point in the future. But, you mentioned scope creep or mission creep. To me, I think it's spreading ourselves too thin is the argument I would make. That'd be my nuance to that. I appreciate competition, and I think competition is valuable. And if you take away competition, then we put ourselves in a situation where the public has no alternatives. And right now, households are struggling. I don't want to add to that. I'm understanding that PGE here pretty soon is going to be announcing new rate increases. I think we're all like in a panic mode. I just don't want to see anything that adds to that and adds to the uncertainty of that. And I did meet with a number of the people a couple months ago, on the hauler side of the world, realizing the challenges they're facing. I know we have a future rate request that'll be in front of us, and we'll be tackling that. I'm sure the economics will probably have a greater calling for an adjustment than we did last year. But I think it's very clear that households are having a hard time, and that's the topic that everywhere I go, that's all I hear right now is how many people are fiscally at that edge where they're just trying to hang on to what they got. And we need to think differently and make sure that we're working hard to keep affordability right front and center into everything that we do and everything we advocate for. So I'll leave it there and yield back, Chair.
All right, thank you. Commissioner Hill.
Yeah, happy St. Patrick's Day. I have a lot of Irish in me. Actually.
Great.
Yeah, I think I'm 30-some% every time I get a new, what is it, the DNA thing you send in, they think I have more than that in me. But anyway, and I don't own green, so there you go.
Yeah.
I am in the spirit, though. Back to the Metro thing, I don't envy your conversation at the table.
No.
And I think one of the things that I hear most, just from our constituents, is sometimes the private sector does things better than
Yes.
government. And I understand there's probably reasoning there with Metro, but in the best interest of taxpayer dollars, sometimes the private sector really does a better job, and we can hold them accountable. And there's just, I think there's cost savings involved by that competition, by taking it out for bid and stuff. So yeah, I don't envy you having to sit there and have that conversation, but I think it's also a little bit fascinating. Other than that, I don't think I have anything else, Chair, so I'll yield back.
All right, thank you, Commissioner Helm. Just a couple quick things. Yesterday, sat down with county administrator, and we had a number of department directors present their budget, and just a big thanks to all the department directors that showed up and elected officials that helped present their budget. And I think that kind of following up on a little bit what Commissioner Savas has said, this is challenging. And I think one of the highlights too, as we're kind of hearing on these budget presentations, is just alone that 7 to 10.5% increase in PGE. We have a lot of usage of power across this county and county buildings that do impact us. So anyway, I know a lot of people put a lot of time and preparation in that even before the meeting, and I had a great organized notebook and could flip through. We actually did it in kind of a record time, I thought. So that's because of all the preparation in getting ready for that. So wanted to thank you for that. And also, just a reminder for folks, the public safety levy is going to be on the May ballot. And again, it's a renewal with basically keeping the same staff that we have. And it is a slight increase, and it's just for those same kind of reasons I talked about, the power. And so I want to remind folks that will be on the ballot. And then my very last thing, and I'm very excited to kind of do this today, and I don't know if we can get the cameras to shift to Andrew over here, but this is Mr. Irish, St. Patrick's Day. There he is, look at that. I love the guy. He is, you.
Make him stand up.
I know. Come on, show everybody. I love this guy. I mean, look at him.
Got an Irish
He is just our star. He comes in, and I'm sorry, Andrew. I very much enjoy working with you. You're so amazing. You buzz through topics so fast, and he is a classy dresser. So with that, I'm sorry to put you on the spot. I'll apologize for that now, but we'll go ahead and adjourn, and we're going to be back here at 1:30. Thanks so much. Okay, good afternoon, everyone, and welcome back to our afternoon session on the Board of County Commissioners. It's March 17th, 2026. County Administrator Gary Schmidt, would you please call the roll?
Yes, thank you, Chair. Commissioner West will be here shortly, but is not here yet. Roll call. Commissioner Schrader.
Here.
Commissioner Helm.
Here.
Commissioner Savas.
Present.
Chair Roberts.
Here. All right, Gary, you want to introduce our first item for
Yes,
us?
thank you. The first session today is Commercial Property Assessed Clean Energy Program, or CPACE. This is a follow-up to prior actions and decisions you have made. Presenting is Dan Johnson, Director of Transportation and Development, and Laura Edmonds, Economic Development Manager. Go ahead, please.
Great, thank you so much. Chair Roberts, Commission, we are here to do a follow-up to you from prior discussions we had about CPACE, essentially a financing tool. The board has given us direction to look at, try to implement as quickly as possible. So we are reporting back to you from our prior discussion to kind of share conceptually what we are envisioning this program will look like. And to admit to you, there's a couple things we've kind of got to get resolution. We're working with our partners to get some resolution on that we'll speak to briefly, and then come forward to you with a public hearing should the board direct us to adopt the program. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Laura Edmonds to kind of run through the materials before you today, and then we'll answer any questions you might have.
Okay. So thank you, Laura Edmonds, Office of Economic Development Manager. So what we have before you, and I just want to kind of go over on January 13th, 2026, if you recall, you directed staff to, and I'm going to kind of tap into what Dan said, directed staff to investigate a little bit further CPACE and what it would look like to be able to stand up our own program. So in doing that, we wanted to make sure that we just kind of captured again the reason and the basis for doing it is to assist owners of qualifying real property and financing cost-effective efficiency improvements and seismic rehabilitation, known as the CPACE program. In addition to helping property owners, the program provides a broadened opportunity for capital providers meeting Oregon requirements to do business in the state. The CPACE program specifics are determined by the establishing jurisdiction, you, Board of County Commissioners, in this case, county. And the program can vary with fees collected, deadlines for application reviews, stringency of improvement efficiencies that are required, and lien enforcement methodology. So you can determine the program specifics in the areas to be compliant with the Oregon Revised Statute authorizing the CPACE program, but what we're bringing forward to you today is the recommendations based on staff's research on some best practices that we can adopt in our program. So what we're recommending are to designate the DTD, Office of Economic Development program, as the administrators of the CPACE program, adopt an ordinance amending the county code to include CPACE and holding required public hearings, direct Office of Economic Development to send advance notices required by statute to all utilities in the county providing electricity, natural gas, and water before the program or ordinance are adopted, and then direct staff to finalize the county process for collection foreclosures as if a local improvement district, and then memorialize in the CPACE some distinct business terms that award parameters in the aforementioned materials. So we are recommending a 1% fee capped at $75,000 due to the Office of Economic Development upon funding of improvements by the capital provider. The lien collection, as if it's a local improvement district, only taxes are superior to the lien. Foreclosure fee and time and materials charges to the capital provider if properties are foreclosed upon, and no county deadline for application approval and no conditional approval. All required applicant documents must be complete upon submittal by the capital provider, and then the owner and capital provider to self-attest improvements covered by capital comply with Oregon law. So with that said, that's pretty much some of the basics, and I will answer questions when you're ready. So legal policy requirements are being completed in coordination with the with County Council, who has drafted the required documents for the CPACE program and will advise on the public hearing process. All CPACE program elements will comply with ORS. Public and government participation, this is what's still being determined through our processes, could be assessment and taxation, county treasurer, or a combination of both. And then, so the options today, do we want to cover your options? Yep, okay.
Yeah, actually, real quick,
Yep.
just to run you through the materials, just so we have a little more information. Attachment A is basically the statutory requirements that that allow for certain jurisdictions to adopt these programs. These programs, for anyone to use them, a number of the initial inquiries we've got are from our city partners that are looking for possible CPACE financing for projects in their jurisdiction. The method and/or the tool is predicated and/or bound and supported through the power that the public has through our assessment and taxation program. And so the county has to adopt the program for the cities to be able to use it. For projects within cities to be able to use it, we've got to adopt the program. They've got to go through the program to the county. So you see this, state statute requirements are in Attachment A. Attachment B would be what would be adopted, which is changes to county code, which would adopt this program into the county code. We've worked, Caleb's done some great work with county council to kind of review all of this and draft all of this. There are a couple of things in there that we're trying to refine, and I just want to bring them to your attention. So for example, there's references to the treasurer. Let me back up. A lot of it is predicated off local improvement district liens and levies, and so those lien collections are just, I don't want to get into the details, but there's a method in which the lien is established. And what we are continuing to try to research and just dive a little deeper into is essentially the foreclosure. It's risk assessment, like to make sure that we're reducing our risk and the work we have to do to collect on these to the most, to limit that risk and exposure going forward. And in all honesty, the work that has to be done by our partners, namely our partners at assessment and taxation, and also with the Treasurer's Office. So while we give you this information right now, some of the terms, and we'll highlight it to you if we bring it back and the board directs us to, but some of these terms in this may change a little bit because we may not need the power of the clerk. We may be looking at possibly hiring like a third-party provider or collector that may be able to reduce some of the requirements of assessment and taxation as well. So just sharing that, but there are three options before you today. But fundamentally, and most importantly, we want to share kind of the concepts around the program that we were looking to develop. This has been a fast time. I'm going to be honest, it's been a fast timeline. There are things we don't know. I mean, there's things that we know, but we think we know, but we want to make sure we know before we adopt anything or put anything in front of you for adoption at a public hearing. But for the most part, we're pretty confident in what we've seen to date. There doesn't appear to be a lot of risk. There's just some refinements that we've got to do regarding a couple of small things. So with that, you see the options that are before you today and the recommendation from staff. We'd be happy to answer any questions you might have.
All right, thank you. Commissioner Helm has a question or comment?
Yeah, comment number one, thank you for putting this on the fast track. I know that we pressed and we appreciate it based on the requests from the cities that would like to implement this program. Will you go back up to page 2, Andrew? I just want to clarify, under the memorialize CPACE distinct business terms. So no county deadline for application approval. Will you explain that to me?
Sure.
Go ahead.
You good? Okay, so yeah, I'd be happy to. So basically, some other programs have specified a response deadline by county staff, and some do it as short as 10 days in which to respond to an application process and lien submittal. And we are not proposing a deadline such as that because it will bind numerous departments and it will cause conflict with existing programs that will have to be stopped entirely in order to meet such a stringent deadline. So we are recommending no deadline. But we still will respond in a very professional manner and as quickly as possible.
In a reasonable
In a
amount of time, right?
Yes.
I don't, that language I almost think needs to be added because it almost looks as if we could sit on it for as long as we want, right? We'll get back to you in a couple years. That was concerned. And then the same with the no conditional approval. Same kind of thing where you've seen that language in other bodies and you want to make sure that it's not hanging us up, correct?
Correct. Let's say, and one of the examples I can give you is if the lender or the capital provider doesn't have a fully executed mortgage holder consent, because the mortgage holder is going to have to take a second right position, so to the CPACE lender. And so without that consent, we could do all this legwork and all this work for nothing if they don't get it.
Right.
And none of us want to process something that's not fully baked.
Right.
So the
Yeah.
intent is not to approve and to work on this until
Yeah.
they have all their paperwork in place,
Exactly,
number
okay.
one. And then number two, some of the, as you see in a lot of, like the land use decisions that we do, if it's theoretically feasible, we approve it with conditions of approval. We don't want to get into that game. You give us the materials, if the materials are right and you've got the materials, we'll take a look at it, get it turned around as timely as possible.
Okay.
I also want to highlight, a lot of these improvements, these qualified improvements, this is not like a full funding kind of discussion. This is stacking capital for projects. And so these qualifying improvements kind of fall into two categories, one of which is like energy efficiency and seismic are kind of the primary areas that fall into. We didn't do any higher than current code, like efficiency standards, and some jurisdictions have. And we didn't do that because in all honesty, our energy efficiency standards for the state are very high.
Right.
But it's kind of a low barrier kind of access to this program and this plan. You see, not all programs have done that, but some have. I think, for example, City of Portland has a little bit higher, I think about 5% increase on the efficiency.
Yeah.
But others don't. And so we just kind of kept a barrier pretty standard and pretty simple, so.
Okay, thank you.
Commissioner Savas.
Yeah, so I do know that we would have a bite from a city in Clackamas County for something like this, and also one in the unincorporated area. So it doesn't need a city for cooperation, right? It can happen unincorporated is my point. But knowing sometimes that there's misunderstandings, what if there is a property owner who wants to implement something like this in a city that doesn't want to do it? Where the city is saying, I don't want to be involved. I'm trying to understand the inner workings as far as, because, we had a program here recently. I won't, I'm not going to go there as far as whatnot, but I think sometimes that when it comes to taxes, if one mistake can lead to, a compounding problem that was not intended. And so I just didn't know if there was an opt-in, opt-out, or is this literally case by case?
Currently, the plan has no opt-in or opt-out components. It also has no impact on the taxes collected by that particular city. It is not foregoing tax. It is not waiving, adjusting, modifying. I believe in that other set of circumstances you were having, there was some tax reductions that impacted the city that weren't intentional. And this does not adjust tax rates. It does not promote tax abatement. But yes, to the heart of your question, it does not require concurrence from a city currently.
Okay, I just want to make sure that that's somehow, in moving forward, we at least message that, and again, I just want one clarifying question I want to just put right back at you, is that if there's a project owner in a city, can that project owner move forward with CPACE strictly through our department without the city's cooperation or authorization?
Yes.
Okay.
Yep. As currently structured. Yeah, please.
So just for clarity's sake, again, Dan already alluded to it, this doesn't affect property taxes. What this does is it provides a less expensive lending mechanism for the specific, energy and seismic improvements. So it's cheaper funding for the capital project, and that's all it is. It's for them to be able to access at a lower rate, 8% instead of 11, as an example. And so it's cheaper funding that adds to the value of the construction project or redevelopment project. So it'll actually, if all else fails, it actually potentially could improve the value of the property within those limits.
And I don't think there's anything that's limiting the board of county commissioners from saying, we want to add that.
Oh, I was about to
Does not-
say,
if that is
we
something
could
that you
put
have interest
language
in
in
that, we
there.
can add that as a
Yeah,
requirement.
That was going to be my comment. We could put language in there that makes sure that we engage the local jurisdiction. I mean, it's very simple. We have heard loud and clear that local jurisdictions have been left out of the conversations when it comes to things like this that are administered by us. So I think that's an easy ask.
Yeah, and the reason I really bring that up is that you're citing here a couple times as if a local improvement district, right? And I know that's different than an urban renewal district, which is even more complex, right? So I just, again, sometimes it's confusing and people can, I think sometimes their fears jump in as opposed to reality. And so I don't know what other kind of language we can add that is educational to this so that people know.
Yeah, it's, we have tax professionals in the room, which I am most definitely not. But I guess just so you know, I mean, the nuance around the LID is the positioning regarding the lending and the extinguishability and the risk associated with that. And I think the term LID was used to kind of describe that type of lien and the value of that type of lien because it has it's sturdier than other liens that are put on properties. So, but yeah, it is an independent, separate component of our LIDs that we run for public projects. You're totally correct. Yeah.
Okay. And maybe one more last thing, I just think about it, just for the record, this would not impair any ability for the city to not collect taxes as it would otherwise. Right? They're going to receive the same, the investments made, they're going to get an assessed value increase. There's nothing that impairs the city's ability or the collection.
There's no abatement of any tax to any city and/or taxing district.
Yep, that's what I was after. Thank you.
Okay.
All right. One comment, first of all, Laura and Dan, thank you so much. I know this has been on the fast track. It's like we keep adding things to your plate. So I know you're aware of that. But I want to say thanks, council and everybody that has kind of stepped up to help us move this kind of on the fast track. I know that in some of our conversations, I think you had mentioned, correct me if I'm wrong, but Washington County had started down this path. I mean, have they had any challenges or any lessons learned from what they've done? He's smiling. That'd be good.
I would love to. Let me take this
I'm
one.
always wanting to
So,
take
yeah.
advantage of lessons learned, right?
So lessons learned. Washington County, after they took 2 years to stand up their program, in reality, they only just saw some program or projects come to fruition in the last year. So they haven't had any major pitfalls. Deschutes County, we've spoken to them. They recently had a CPACE program for a biotech firm. It was substantial, but what ended up happening, because the 10-day limitation on response, they had to drop everything else they were doing in order to meet that deadline. They did it, but it was a lot. It was a very arduous period of time for their agency to be able to fulfill that deadline. So that was one of their lessons learned. And then, and honestly, I think some of the others, and that's why also when I look at Deschutes County, so Mid-Columbia Economic Development District works, they're the administrator for Sherman, Wasco, a number of counties. And no, before I'm asked, they can't be our administrator because they're geographically bound just being preemptive. So, but what they've learned is that not being provided the entirety of the packet in advance before they started working on the lien, the deal fell through. And they ended up spending hours in the setup and arrangements to be able to accommodate the lien in their short period of, that deadline. And it ended up not coming to fruition. So that's.
There have been a lot of lessons learned. It's also the lean type is a lesson that we've learned. We've been talking collectively, ourselves, Steve from Office of Economic Development and others, meeting with these folks, getting up to speed on the program. All those discussions have kind of led to the dialogue that you see here today. I mean, we are trying to make it as flexible and viable as possible, not creating any additional headaches or limitations or objectives, but ensuring we're reducing our risk as much as we can, so.
Yeah, great job on researching and talking to those folks. I want to thank you. Commissioner West had a comment.
Thank you, Chair. We've been learning about this quickly as it has been presented to us, and we had business leaders and developers here in the metro area come and meet with us and say we need all the tools we can get to have pro forma work and to make sure that we can continue to develop and build. I think this is a super creative and interesting tool, and we're trying to be innovative and responsive to our business community here in Clackamas County. And please correct me if I'm wrong, I guess it says here in the packet that it has an estimated cost, not much, but $75,000 per year on average. So my question is there not an administrative fee that we charge? Or maybe I walked in late, you guys already talked about this.
That's a request from individuals to put a dollar amount there. I can't tell you how much it's going to cost.
Okay.
I mean, I'm going to look at you right now and say, you know what? If we've got somebody that comes in for funding over a certain amount of money, it's 1%. It's a 1% point on the total cost. That's kind of what I thought about worst case scenario.
Yeah. But it may be a wash too, right?
Yeah. So it's going to depend on the loan amount and the lending amount.
But if we can help produce more commercial and economic development, and then that in the long run is really good for Clackamas County and the region. I mean, I think overall we actually are a net positive.
Grow your tax base. Yep.
I think it's great because it really deals with the cash flow needs that industry and businesses are seeing right now. That lowers that upfront cost. That's a big deal. It improves property value and cash flow. Gives them like certainty and fixed rate financing and a number of other benefits that they're needing to be able to make these investments that they've had trouble to do, not just in the Portland area, but in the state as a whole. So I think that this is creative. I support it. I'm glad that, hey, thanks for being so responsive to get this. This has moved really fast, but the board has wanted to jump on this and be responsive. And so thank you for that. Totally recognize it. All hands on deck to address this issue in the Portland Metro. Maybe this will make us not 80th out of 81 of real estate investing attractiveness. We're trying to do better. And so thank you for that. I appreciate it. And I think we actually might end up on top here and maybe not even have any costs. So I think that's good.
All right. Well, may I have a motion by someone?
I move to direct staff to schedule a public hearing for adoption of an ordinance amending county code to implement the CPACE program as proposed.
Second.
Right. Commissioner Schrader has moved to direct staff to schedule a public hearing for adoption of an ordinance amending county code to implement the CPACE program as proposed. Commissioner Helm has seconded that. Any further discussion? Seeing none, clerk, would you please call the poll?
Commissioner Savas.
Aye.
Commissioner West.
Aye.
Commissioner Schrader.
Aye.
Commissioner Helm.
Aye.
Mr. Chair.
Aye.
Motion passes 5-0, Mr. Chair.
And Gary, what do you got?
Thank you. The next policy session is File ZDO-290, Clear and Objective Standards. Presenting is Dan Johnson again, Director of Transportation and Development, and Jennifer Hughes, the Planning Division Director. Go ahead, please.
Unfunded mandate, just going to say that out right now and be done with it because it worked so well for our partners in crime last time we were here. So, hey, we are here and we thank you for the time today. This is a land use topic. It's an amendment to our code. We apologize for how complex it is because it is going to do kind of a deeper dive into a variety of different topics. And we're just happy to be here to answer any questions you might have. Jennifer has done Ms. Hughes, our plan director, has done an amazing job kind of writing the staff report to make it as clear and concise as we can make it. And then we do have a PowerPoint, and the PowerPoint is to try to assist kind of going through this decision-making process. We're going to take a couple seconds for Jennifer to kind of run through it, kind of highlight the why are we here, what needs to happen, and then roll through kind of the questions that we have for you and the direction we're looking for from the board. So with that, Jennifer.
Good afternoon. I'm Jennifer Hughes, and I'm the Planning Director in Planning and Zoning. And you run the slides, is that right? Thank you. So we're here to talk to you today about file ZDO-290, which has the really short title, Clear and Objective Standards for Implementation of Statewide Planning Goals 5, 6, 7, and 15. Next slide, please. Oh, you've already got it. He's ahead of me. So for starters, why are we doing this? Why is this project necessary? It's been kind of percolating out there for a while, so some of you who've been on the board for a while may kind of remember hearing about this on previous long-range planning work programs. There was some hope at one time that maybe some legislation would save us from this. That did not happen, so we are at the point now where we really have to do something about our code. So why is it necessary? It's necessary because state law requires that standards that are applied to housing development be clear and objective. Okay, so what does that mean? Generally, to be clear, it means that if it's clear, it's easily understood. So that's kind of the first thing. And then sort of what does it mean to be objective? It means that we cannot be applying subjective value-laden analysis to our criteria. So for example, if somebody is building a multifamily complex, we can't have a standard that says the development shall be consistent with the character of the neighborhood. Because we don't know what consistent means, we don't know what character means, we don't even know what the neighborhood is. So, and you can get pretty far down the rabbit hole with these things. Our definitions have to be clear and objective. Often you need to have maps. If you are measuring something, you need to know where you're starting and ending that measurement. So it can get pretty far into the weeds in terms of figuring out how we do this. Our code is clearly not compliant with that requirement currently. I'm not saying every standard we have is non-compliant, but we have a lot of things that are still subjective that apply to housing, technically apply to housing. We're not able to actually apply them at this point. So that's the reason we're doing it, because we have to comply with the law. So why can't we simply repeal the non-compliant regulations, right? That would be the easiest thing. We'll just go in, we'll just repeal everything that's subjective. And there's two reasons for that. Policy reasons. So first of all, there are some good reasons why some of these regulations were adopted over the years, or at least boards before you over the last 60 years or so thought there were some good reasons to do some of these things, to regulate things for environmental protection or aesthetics or quality of life, infrastructure, all those things. And then there are legal reasons, which is that just because our standards have to be clear and objective doesn't mean we're not required to comply with statewide planning goals. We are. So if we were to simply repeal, for instance, our statewide planning goal 5 regulations for streams, we would then be non-compliant with statewide planning goal 5. So we have to strike a balance in terms of how we clean up the code without putting ourselves out of compliance with state law. So where are we in this project, in this zoning code update process? And I guess I would say I still feel like we're kind of early in it, although we have been working on this for some months with a consultant. But what's been happening so far has really been what I would describe as preparatory. So the Department of Land Conservation and Development has funded a consultant to assist the county with this. So there's a little funding for this mandate. It's not enough funding, but there's some. And so the consultants have gone through our code for these specific areas, which we'll talk more about. And they have identified the provisions that are problematic, that are not clear and objective. They have suggested some things that we could consider to make them clear and objective. We've talked to the Planning Commission a couple of times about their thoughts. We have not yet done public outreach. That will happen. We have barely begun drafting code amendments. The consultants have started on some that we didn't need immediate feedback from you on. So this is going to be playing out for about the next year, we would anticipate, and ultimately would culminate in public hearings before the Planning Commission and you, before, of course, the code were to be amended. So this is the first time you're hearing from me in detail on this, but it certainly will not be the last. So policy questions, why are we coming to you today? In order for the consultants to move forward with the next phase of draft amendments to the code, there really are some, what I view as significant policy questions that we need to get some input from you on. And the reason for that is because, as I said, it's sort of, you say clear and objective, you think, oh, that's sort of deceptively simple. It's really not. And when we go into our code and realize that some of our regulations are decades old, relying on maps that are decades old, you can imagine the sort of, sometimes we're not even sure what the standards were supposed to mean in the first place. I mean, we've been applying them, but does anybody really know? And the mapping, in some cases, our adopted maps are paper or maybe laminated paper rolled up in the corner of a room over in planning, which isn't particularly modern in today's world in terms of how we are, used to thinking about the resources that are available to people when they want to figure out what's on their property and what's being regulated. But every decision we make has the potential to regulate more people or to regulate them differently, to provide more protection or less protection for various environmental resources or hazard areas. And so it creates a lot of complexity, like Dan said. So what we want to talk to you about today specifically are 4 questions. I'm going to give them all to you first, and then we'll walk through them one at a time. Should the county update the regulatory maps of streams and wetlands? Should the county update the regulatory maps of mass movement hazards? Should the county adopt regulatory maps of fire hazard areas? And should the county implement clear and objective upland tree protection regulations in the urban area? So just really easy questions today. I think, Dan and I kind of talked about this. I feel like it might work best to talk about these one at a time. But that is absolutely at your discretion, Mr. Chair. If you would like to take it that way, we're happy to do it that way, or I can run through the whole presentation all at once.
Gary, what do you think? It's a lot to cover. You want?
One at a time.
Yeah.
One at a time is my suggestion.
All right, so let's maybe start with the streams and wetlands.
Okay. So I mentioned the long title for this project. So statewide planning goals 5, 6, 7, and 15, to summarize, cover, for the most part, environmentally protected areas and areas that are prone to natural hazards. So it's streams, wetlands, steep slopes, landslides, wildfire hazard areas, floodplains. We're not covering floodplain today, but that is covered by Goal 7, the Willamette River Greenway, water quality. So all of those pieces are encapsulated in those 4 goals. We regulate streams and wetlands in a couple of different ways. We regulate them for water quality, and then we regulate them for habitat, fish and wildlife habitat. So there are 2 different ways that we do that, which is part of the reason this is so complicated. We have different standards in the urban area than we have in the rural area. But the bottom line is the mapping that exists is in the rural area, out of date with regard to the sort of current version of the streams, of the stream maps. We have maps we adopted in the 1990s, and since then, the state has updated those. They have better information about where fish are, where fish can actually go in these streams, removal of barriers to fish passage, that kind of thing. So there are more modern, updated maps we could we could adopt. In the urban area, the mapping is better. It's more recent. It was done by Metro. It's not perfect, but there are ways for the public to sort of navigate that if we have something mapped that shouldn't be. But there's also text in our code that regulates for water quality purposes with no maps. So it's just simply, if it happens that there's a water feature out there on your site, you're required to meet these highly discretionary standards that they're definitely not clear and objective. So essentially, we're at the point now where we're trying to figure out, okay, what's the minimum we have to do, and then what are the other options available to you? The minimum requirement that we think is we have to repeal the discretionary standards. It's clear that we're not able to apply those. So that's sort of the minimum. What else could we do? We could adopt updated maps. So if we adopt updated maps, what does that mean? Well, sort of what I mentioned. It means some people will be regulated who are not currently regulated. It means we will have a higher level of environmental protection in some cases than we currently have. It also could mean that some streams that really were some sort of mapping anomaly that aren't really there. I mean, there will be some people who might not be regulated anymore if we it doesn't just work one way, but for the most part, it's likely that we'll find additional features that require regulation. The new mapping expands the scope of the project, so it increases cost in addition to property owner impacts. We weren't really anticipating doing that additional work. So if we are going to do that, we either need to sort of put it in a parking lot and come back to it after we finish kind of this first round of amendments, or we need to take a step back and figure out hiring consultants, more staff time, whatever it is, to figure out what that new mapping would look like exactly. And then the other issue is potentially there is some loss of water quality protection if we don't do new maps, because we will be removing that kind of general text that says, hey, if we find a stream on your property, you have some standards, whatever they might be, we'll figure out in the moment. That would go away. So those are kind of the issues. I know it's a lot. In the rural area, just sort of summarize, you can repeal the discretionary standards that we have right now, rely on the maps adopted in the 90s, or you could adopt new maps, which would come from the state. We wouldn't do our own mapping for that. And that would just be for streams. Wetlands, we defer to the state for wetlands. In the urban area, you would either, again, repeal the discretionary water quality standards, and then if you want to adopt new maps, that's something that we're gonna have to figure out. Potentially, we would have to do our own. I'm not sure what other source there is. We might have to do our own mapping. We'd have to sort of pull together some resources and figure out how big of an effort that would be.
One little quick point of clarification. The part where Jennifer said this is not the last time you're going to hear from me, I want to emphasize that. We're simply getting guidance on which way to start this process, okay? So if you look at the options and recommendations, we broke every one of these down into unique recommendations into unique options and unique recommendations. So on the screen right now, you can see the option. Keep going down. Keep going down. Right there. Thank you. So you'll see there are, and I'm not going to read these because you can see them on the screen, obviously, but there are two recommendations, two options there, pardon me. You can see the recommendation that we have presented for you today is essentially directing staff to advance the CDO amendment to, in the urban area, continue to use existing adopted stream and wetland inventories and repeal discretionary water quality standards for unmapped streams and wetlands. In the rural area, continue to defer to the Department of State Lands and Army Corps of Engineers for wetland regulations. Continue to use existing adopted stream inventories and repeal discretionary water quality standards for streams not on the adopted inventory. That's probably a dissertation that we can spend the next 3 hours figuring out what all that means, but yeah, happy to answer any questions.
Yeah, I have a.
Go ahead,
Jump.
Martha. I think-
Give me an example of what you're talking about when you say a discretionary water quality standards. Okay, just give me, discretion means it's kind of up to you and you may or may
Yeah.
not use, be a little more immutable in what you, I get the
yeah.
word, but I don't have a context for what
I wish
that
I
really
could
means.
quote the standard off the top of my head, and I don't have the code in front of me, but it would be something like, development shall be designed to minimize erosion, preserve natural vegetation, and result in the maintenance of a natural buffer strip along the river. Something like that. But we don't know what a natural buffer strip is. We don't exactly know what natural vegetation is. We don't know for sure, like the width. There's a range. Oh, it might be 100 feet. It might be 150. We have to decide based on some subjective features. That would be discretionary, as opposed to simply saying, all structures shall be a minimum of 100 feet from the mean high water line, and then have a definition of what that is.
Okay.
Right. Commissioner Hill.
Thank you. Yeah, it is confusing.
Very.
But we did receive some constituent communications on this. I know you guys were probably forwarded. The one that stood out most to me was the Hoodland CPO, because they know all about fire and floods, right? So they had recommended language. They're concerned about ambiguous language in there, and I just would encourage you to please read through what they wrote. They took a lot of time, and I think they have a lot of really great points that they made based on their experiences up there at the mountains. So I'm hoping you guys can work some of this into this, and I appreciate that this is the start of the conversation and we're not done, but I'm just hoping we can kind of weave some of their concerns into what you're working on, so.
I'm not saying that, so look, that's a great example, that material that was submitted, because if you read it, and it added more specificity towards a lot of the terminology they were using, and that's what needs to be done. Not saying that we're going to adopt all that verbatim, but it's a great example of kind of how we add clarity to the code.
And it does need clarity,
Yeah.
because what's happened up there, I know, is that, homes were built too close to the river, and the homes are now in the river or floating down the river, and where had they not been allowed to be there, and what is the right number as the river shifts? It's called the Sandy River for a reason, right? It shifts continually. So I just encourage you that I think that people have put a lot of thought into this, and I want to take that into consideration. Thank you.
All right, Commissioner Salas.
So similar thoughts. What we're saying here that would be somewhat aligned or guiding, if there's a distance requirement from a stream or a high water mark, we're relying on the state maps. Is that what I'm hearing?
The streams themselves are mapped by Metro in the urban area, I'm sure based on some state data, state in the rural area. The measurements generally, and this is going to need to get synced up, but generally are from the mean high water line, and there's some ambiguity in what that is, so the consultants are going to recommend or have recommended that we adopt a new definition. I don't have that memorized, but it'll be more specific than what we have currently about where you start running your measurement.
Right, so my concern is, probably the best one, we just talked about it, is a zigzag or the Sandy or whatever, is that channel migration, just because there's so much erosion, just one wet period can move 10, 15 feet, in one fell swoop. So not only could they lose land, but they could also gain a lot of land. And so that's always changing. So how often typically have we seen those maps being updated?
So I don't know the cycle that the state's on, but it wouldn't, I think the real issue is not so much that we can't figure out where the river is today, but the issue is you're going to pull your measurement the day you come in with your building permit, and then 3 years from now, in fact, the river may be somewhere else. And I don't have a solution for that unless you want really large buffers, or certainly we've had suggestions in the past to not permit new development in the channel migration zone, but that is a significant policy conversation if you're going to consider doing that. It's certainly beyond the scope of what we're talking about here. But yeah, I don't have an answer for the whole river moving. You're right, it's going to shift the point of measurement.
Right, and then the high water mark, which is a different dimension, right? High water, how often is that updated or visited?
So the mean high water line is generally defined as it's sort of like something you can see when you're looking at the bank, because you can kind of tell how high the water's been based on changes in vegetation. It's sort of an observational kind of thing. And that's, I think, part of the problem and why the consultants are saying we have to do something that's a little bit more specific than that. But again, it's not mapped. That point is not mapped, which is why we're going to have to define it in a way that's a little more clear than what we have currently.
Yeah, and earlier you mentioned, and I from experienced this on land use stuff in the years past and present, and that is that, what is or what is not a buffer, right? And the definition of that and how it applies to wherever, again, absent high water mark, right? It's really about where, right? Or the distance. So we, by adopting, Metro in the urban area with probably they use some referencing of the state maps, are we bound by that? Is there any other source that anyone could, I guess what I'm getting at is that let's just say it's 10 years from now before they update something and we know it's wrong, or we know it's changed or moved, right? It seems to me we're tying ourselves to, if we're clear and objective standards, and then we're going to tie ourselves to something that we know is outdated, we're stuck.
Right.
For now, yeah, you would have to adopt, right, if you chose today to we're going to stick with the old maps, then that's what we have, is the old maps. And we know that they're not, they're right in a lot of respects, but they're not as current. And you're right, it could shift tomorrow. I think the problem is, are we bound? Well, Sort of. Under Goal 5, Metro did a specific inventory that's been acknowledged by the state. We're sort of protected under that umbrella if we use their Goal 5 inventory for the urban area. For the water quality piece that we're talking about, we could do our own thing. We could try to find other mapping sources, which, I mean, I'm not saying they don't exist. We just have never tried to catalog all of that. So we could adopt our own maps that are more comprehensive and apply water quality buffers if we wanted to. And that's kind of the question, is whether you want us to explore that.
All right, so the other one I want to just ask about, because we keep on saying water quality, right? Not necessarily the location of where the stream is or it's not, but water quality, I mean, are we going to be, is that going to be defined and looked at like everything else with TMDLs, with, turbidity, with temperature? I mean, is it going to be that granular?
So we're not doing, I mean, we as a county, of course, have some obligations under TMDL, which are far beyond the scope of just the land use piece, and I don't pretend to remotely be an expert on that. But of course, the county's got an erosion control program now, so there are layers of things that are, kind of in play. For us, from the water quality standpoint so far, it's been really about a buffer. Again, how far away do you keep building? It's about some sort of during construction, where do you stage your construction materials? How do you protect stuff from running off, which is really that erosion control piece. There's some vegetation, like mitigation. If you're going to build something, you maybe have to plant some things to replace what's lost. So there's the mitigation piece to it. But we don't have land use regulations that say, well, we're going to go out and measure the temperature or check the sediment, or there's no sort of ongoing monitoring of those kind of environmental pieces. It's really about do development in a way that sort of encourages that will not get worse or might improve, but there's no like scientific testing going on through the land use piece.
So it's not going to be specific, it's going to be more, so to speak, advisory and prevention from erosion or whatnot.
Yeah, it's more about pulling the development away from the stream and then mitigation plantings and the sort of construction piece of erosion control. Yep.
Okay, so
Yes.
I'll stop here with this
That's
last
what it
question. How do you make that clear in a objective?
I have no idea, Commissioner Savas. This project is keeping me awake at night. I mean, I guess some other jurisdictions have done some things that we can kind of model after and do the best that we can, but it is hard because it really does kind of, it leaves you in this, like, there's no such thing as sort of engineering judgment, which is, start thinking about other things like road improvements, sewer improvement. Like, this isn't just for these, this is just what we're talking about today, but it has ripple effects in a number of areas, and I think it's a lot harder than the legislature thinks to make things clear and objective.
And probably counterintuitive to what they're trying to do.
Yeah, flexibility actually isn't bad in a number of, but that's the implication of this, is that it is, yeah.
Yeah, one comment, and then I'll go to it. Yeah, I do want to, on your option 1A, I really do like how you phrased this in here. In the rural area, continue to defer to the Department of State Lands, Army Corps Engineer for the wetland regulations. And, I mean, just reading this and getting conflicting stuff, the areas that really it does appeal to me is kind of a good direction to go. That's all I want to say. Commissioner Helm.
No, that's, on one of the correspondence, it talks about there's kind of a conflict between FEMA terminology, the 704, they quote a lot of OARs, and the definition of mean high water line does not comply with Goal 5. Because OAR ... applies to top of bank instead of mean high water as a point to start a measure that would establish the setback and a riparian corridor. So it is very confusing, but I think we could make our own language that, again, makes it reasonable, common sense, based on what's happened in some of these areas where we've had problems, and even in areas where we haven't had problems. We are maybe likely to have problems in the future, so.
We're not afraid to try.
No,
I'm sure we'll get there.
I know. It's reading through this, there's a lot of confusing language between all the different things that are kind of married into the same ordinance, so.
Correct, yes, for sure, and we'll definitely be back to you with language and things as this moves along, for sure.
All right, so I think what we'll do is take this first item one at a time, and if there's a commissioner willing to make a motion on the streams and wetland topic we've been discussing.
I move to direct staff to draft ZDO amendments to, this is a long one. In the urban area, continue to use existing adopted stream and wetland inventories and repeal discretionary water quality standards for unmapped streams and wetlands. In the rural area, continue to defer to the Department of State Lands, Army Corps of Engineers for wetland regulations, and continue to use existing adopted stream inventory and repeal discretionary water quality standards for streams not on the adopted inventory. Whew.
I'll second that, even though I think I understand it. Just saying.
All
There's
right.
mud.
All right, our first one of many to go, 3. It looks like, let me get through the motion in a second, and then I think Commissioner Savas has a comment. So Commissioner Helm has moved to direct staff to draft ZDO amendments to, in the urban area, continue to use existing adopted stream and wetland inventories and repeal discretionary water quality standards for the unmapped streams and wetlands. In the rural area, continue to defer the Department of State Lands and Army Corps of Engineers for wetland regulations, continue to use existing adopted stream inventory, and repeal discretionary water quality standards for streams not on the adopted inventory. That has been seconded by Commissioner Schrader, and I know we have further discussion by Commissioner Savas. Sir, go ahead.
Yeah, well, for all the questions and answers, everything that's been said here, I'm at this level of discomfort, and not because of either the motion or the language or any of you, what you're recommending, but it's the situation we kind of talked about. And I can just see, as soon as this becomes adopted, the first application might be exaggerated, maybe it's the second one, comes along and someone's going to challenge something about this and say it's either not clear, objectionable, or the location of the buffer is incorrect, right? It's going to be challenged no matter what. So and also the way I'm wired to do things as best as possible. Nothing's ever perfect. I'm also wired to do things that make sense, and it's got this pragmatic, logical approach. And that's where I'm having a hard time connecting here, right? Mm-hmm. Because I don't see any way of achieving that other than we're going to go through an exercise just to at least have the appearance of complying, right? Knowing that we're going to have all these challenges. So I'm just going to say I'm struggling with this. And I don't see an example right now, as we talked about all those things, water quality, high water mark, or the location of the buffer, relying on all these maps where it will be clear and clear enough and not be able to be challenged. So I don't see us actually achieving the goal. That's where I'm struggling. Sure. I know that you're trying, not a criticism. There's nothing you can do better, right?
Well, right, and maybe try, I guess, I know that, because I get overwhelmed by this project, but today, we're really just wanting to talk about which streams and wetlands we regulate. So all the rest of this, there's going to be more decision points, more discussion points for things like, do we like the definition we came up with of top of bank? Did we get the vegetation mitigation requirements correct? There's other decision points. This is really just direction of, hey, planning department, go out and find me better mapping and let's adopt new maps. And then it's public notice and telling people there's streams out there we're now going to regulate and that we weren't before and all of that, or at least we weren't clearly before. So it's really just about the maps today, which I'm not saying that makes your decision easier, but it is a narrower decision, I think.
And correct me if I'm wrong, the specific language that has the specificity that you're trying to get to will be presented to you at a future date for consideration.
Yes, correct.
So when you talk about those terms that you're in your head that you're trying to see, and this is not doing that. That will come though.
Right. So exactly.
Okay.
All right. Well, with that, clerk, will you please call a poll?
Commissioner West.
Aye.
Commissioner Schrader.
Aye.
Commissioner Savas.
Shall I outpause Commissioner West?
I think.
Aye.
Commissioner Helm.
And I'm an aye, but I will say these are all very reluctant ayes because it's so confusing. But I think we trust you a lot to bring us the right language, and I think that's why we're all like, it's kind of above our pay grade here. It's difficult, sorry.
No,
Shouldn't have done.
you're fine.
And Mr. Chair.
Aye.
Motion passes 5-0, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, everybody. I could tell that.
One down, couple
Yeah,
more.
one down, now we're
Yeah,
moving
I
to
know.
we're just getting easier. We're going to talk about
Little-
landslides.
Oh, woohoo.
Yeah, I'm obviously kidding that it's not easier. So the zoning code calls them mass movement hazards, but more commonly we'll hear them referred to as landslides. Our maps that we've been regulating for 50 or 60 years are from the 1970s. We literally have laminated maps rolled up in the corner of the phone room where we take public service calls. It's not an ideal situation. The data is not entirely inaccurate, but it is somewhat inaccurate. And it also doesn't cover a huge section of the county. So at the time that they did these maps in the 70s, they were able to do sort of the northwest part of the county. Now there is much better data available. So the state agency is the Department of Geology and Mineral Industries. They have much better, more modern mapping created with LiDAR technology that has revealed that some of what they mapped in the 70s is not really landslide topography. So some people would actually no longer be mapped as having a hazard. But of course, they found many more that are, that weren't mapped previously. And it now has much more coverage. So it goes out toward Mount Hood. So this is another situation where arguably we don't have to adopt new maps. It's
Sorry. I thought I had turned it off, but I did not. So, sorry to interrupt.
It's okay, no problem.
I am paying attention. Thank you.
It's always good to have a moment of levity.
You got my attention.
That's good. At least that's the tone to the discussion.
I think she wanted this all to be.
Okay, so do I have a motion?
All right, back to the landslide.
Sorry.
So there
Oh,
are.
this is going to be a tape someday. And
There's still some question in our minds. We're going to have to continue to do some research. The state did adopt some additional landslide hazards in 2002, still a long time ago, that the county's never adopted, that we may be legally required to start regulating. That's very unclear to me at this moment, so ongoing research there. But even that isn't the best data. The best data is newer than that. And so the question is, should we adopt those new maps? I will say the Planning Commission felt very strongly that we should, that this is a safety issue, and that if there's better mapping that shows that certain building sites may be at risk, we should be regulating that. The way the regulations currently work and the way we would anticipate that they would continue to work, although slightly more clearly and objectively than they currently do, is the requirement to get a geotechnical study done. So the applicant hires a consultant, the consultant prepares a report, looks at the building plans, looks at the building site, says this is what you need to do here. There's never a guarantee. They're not going to promise it's not going to slide down the hill, but they're going to give them that these are the recommendations. This is how you revegetate. This is where you divert your stormwater. This is how you design your foundation. So it is a cost. It's a cost to have that report done. But staff's recommendation is that you do adopt the new maps and that we regulate using the best scientific data that we have available. It will mean sending out notices to folks and letting them know that these maps may be affecting their property. Some people will be removed. And again, it's not that every one of these potential landslide sites is developable or doesn't, not everybody's going to be developing. It's not like every urban lot has this, but it will be new regulations for some people.
Just a point of clarification, these requirements aren't retroactive to the current development, though.
No, it'd be for new development moving forward.
Okay.
Correct.
Yeah,
Did
so
you
they
say
wouldn't,
some-
if somebody had to construct it on their property, if this was new napped area, it would be information from them. It would not be retroactive to make them go back and change their current structure.
Correct, yes, new development.
Yeah, new
Right.
development.
So the options on this one, I'll just, were Direct staff to draft ZDO amendments to continue to use the adopted landslide hazard maps from the 1970s with the potential addition of rapidly moving landslide hazards mapped by Dogami in 2002, or direct staff to draft ZDO amendments to replace the existing landslide hazard maps with new mapping available from Dogami. And that's staff's recommendation to be on that one.
To be.
Yeah. That makes more sense.
All right. Any questions from my colleagues?
I just have a question. I mean, do we, just knowing how much erosion there is and landslides and movement, I call it the ooze, right? Everything just kind of, some areas just kind of just crawl and just, the land just moves, right? And sometimes you can see it in the vegetation that is moving. So my question is, do we have, and is there any recommended or anticipated frequency in which this is done, right? Where we do it, let's say in 2026, are we going to do it again and are we going to wait another 24 years? Or, do we anticipate any frequency to update those maps? And the reason I'm asking this is that, let's just say them is a one-time movement. I'm just kind of concerned in a way that people that maybe don't show a movement today, now the mapping's all done, we can't help this obviously, but what if their insurance company says, you know what, we're not gonna insure this property any longer. Because we think it's moving. It's kind of like almost like a fire hazard kind of a thing, right? So insurance companies are doing that. I'm just wondering, is there only one, when we update this, do we have a choice? Is there an option as to how solid that work is? Is it a reliable source, or is there multiple sources? Who does this work?
To my knowledge, just Department of Geology and Mineral Industries in Oregon, as far as I know. I'm certainly not an authoritative source on everything related to landslides, but that's what we hear about. And it, over a period of years, they have done these flyovers, funded that, expanded the coverage. Whether they will be able to continue to update those over time, I'm sure, like everything else, is a budgetary question. I wouldn't assume that we would have the resources to do it ourselves. I think we'd be relying on, but there's nothing that prevents us from adopting new data when it becomes available.
And the comfort we can give you is it's a heck of a lot more solid than the mean high water line discussion we were just having.
Yes,
It's based
exactly.
off soils. It's based off topography that's in the area, slope characteristics. If you've looked at the maps, they're very clear about escarpments and slopes associated with the soil types underneath it. There's less of a frequency or of change associated with them than some of the issues we were dealing with rivers. So I'm not saying it's perfect, not by any means, but it tends to last the test of time a little bit more.
All right. With a little bit of experience on landslides, I know insurance does not typically cover it. So you're
correct.
pretty much on your own when it comes to landslides. And you're right. I mean, I've had to hire geologists to do the whole soil samples, and there are a lot of slide areas in our county. So anyway, with that being said, is there any of my colleagues wishing to make a motion on the landslide hazards?
Okay, I direct staff to draft CDO amendments to replace the existing landslide hazard maps with new mapping available from Dogami.
Second.
Thank you, ladies. Commissioner Schrader has moved to direct staff to draft ZDO amendments to replace the existing landslide hazard maps with new mapping available from DOGAMI. And Commissioner Helm has seconded that. Any further discussion? Clerk, would you please call the poll?
Commissioner Savas.
Aye.
Commissioner West.
Aye.
Commissioner Schrader.
Aye.
Commissioner Helm.
Aye.
Mr. Chair.
Aye.
Motion passes 5-0, Mr. Chair.
All right. Friends, we're moving right along. Wildfire hazards.
Wildfire. So what the county has now are extremely discretionary standards. No map that says where those apply. It's just sort of these blanket statements about fire hazard areas that have been in the code, I think, since about 1980. Definitely problematic for housing. I mean, we could keep them for other types of development, but I don't think that's necessarily the most efficient thing to do. But for housing, we definitely cannot keep them. So the options sort of the minimum requirement is we need to repeal those standards. There are other standards. I don't want to make it sound like we have nothing that would apply toward wildfire. I mean, we have certainly what they call fuel break standards when people are building dwellings in our forest zones that require that defensible space. That's only in forest zones, though. The state requires that, so we apply those. We certainly have coordination in DTD with our fire districts in terms of access requirements and, if on steep slopes, maybe having to sprinkler the house or have, sources of firefighting water. There are some things that apply, but certainly not to every house in every situation would that be the case. Most of you are aware, I'm sure, about the state's efforts to adopt a wildfire hazard map, which they did do and then repealed because of the reaction. So I'm hesitant to come here and tell you that I think the county should take that on our own. Given what we saw, it seems like it would be a big lift, I guess, to do that. So I think the minimum requirement is we repeal the discretionary standards. We rely on the other ZDO standards I mentioned. There's also the ability for the county to do non-regulatory things through our disaster management department, public education. We already do some of that anyway, but there are other things that we can do that don't fall under that regulatory umbrella. Alternatively, if you want to do more, we could adopt clear and objective standards. That would need to apply then on some geographic basis, which could either be everywhere. It could be based on certain areas of the county. For instance, rural zones, but not urban zones that are, we could slice that any way you would want to, or by adopting our own fire hazard maps, which presumably would rely upon the work that the state already did, I'm assuming. I don't think we would be going out and doing it ourselves. And then the question would be, what would the standards be that would apply in those areas? The two that come up most frequently are defensible space, which, as I mentioned, we do have for dwellings in forest zones that require vegetation clearing within certain distances from homes and a number of other types of structures. And the other one is fire hardening of new structures. So that would not be adopted through the zoning code. That would be something the county would adopt as a building code provision. I believe Deschutes County did just do that recently. So that is the alternative. Staff's recommendation at this point is the minimum. Repeal the discretionary fire hazard area standards and rely on the other ZDO standards we already have. But certainly if you're interested in looking at some of these other things, we can, come back. It can go in a parking lot if there's interest and be a project in the future, or you could direct us to start work on it now. You want to read? I won't read all the options for number 3, but the recommendation is option 3A, direct staff to draft ZDO amendments to repeal the general regulations for unmapped fire hazard areas and rely on other ZDO standards.
I just want to, and Jennifer did a great job of kind of highlighting those other standards. I do want to be clear. New development is required to be consistent with the requirements of the local fire district regarding fire access. So that's regarding to driveway access, turnarounds, fire, water supply. All of that is currently out there. Doesn't deal with the hardening or the fuel breaks. Think about the fuel breaks, a large percentage of our forested areas, shockingly, are zone timber or ag forest where those apply. Yeah. And so we have a large portion of our county that's already subject to those kind of buffer standards that are out there for fuel break areas. So we'd be happy to answer any questions you might have.
All right, Commissioner West has a comment.
Yeah, thank you for that. I think I totally agree with your reasoning around this. Some of this is already covered. It would be duplicative, potentially have unintended consequences that could make livability a little bit more difficult for residents of Clackamas County. This probably impacts rural Clackamas County more than the urban area. So yeah, I appreciate your thoughtful approach to this to try to minimize where government's reach would be here. My one question is, I know in the rural area, maybe there's already regulations that in this wouldn't cover that, but you see a lot of like burn pits, or not burn pits, that are like burn piles and whatnot happening. Is that already heavily regulated within our code on how burning large amounts of garbage or whatever on your rural property? Or is that not already covered?
Essentially, that sort of public burning is regulated through the local fire district.
Okay.
Authority to burn on that.
Okay.
And you'll notice they have notifications on burn days and days in which you cannot burn. And if somebody is burning on a day that they put a restriction in place, they're contacted and they coordinate with local.
Local fire.
Fire, yep.
Perfect. Yeah, then your minimal approach, I totally support. Thank you.
Commissioner Helm.
So Jennifer, you brought up that the state, I think this was in the short session, they tried to do a wildfire map that was,
So they did one. I'm going to get my years all mixed up. The sessions have started to run together. They did one. They worked with Oregon OSU, and they actually adopted it. And then in 2025, they repealed it because of the extreme pushback. And they've switched to more of a voluntary, try to help folks establish defensible space, fire hardened, and not the we're going to create a map and require you to. Yeah.
okay, and it was the regulatory piece of that everyone freaked out over, right?
It was really the
Insurance.
map. I think the map was
map?
actually the biggest piece that
Okay.
people were really concerned.
Right.
The insurance company looked at that, and then they would drop, people couldn't get their
Yeah,
homes insured
yeah,
any longer,
okay.
or they huge premiums.
Okay,
Yeah.
okay, I just wanted a little history on that too. Thank you for that clarification. Okay,
Another example of clear and objective standards by the map, which completely backfired.
right.
Didn't go well. Yes, that is true.
We would definitely fill this room if we started talking about that.
Yes, we would.
I think one of the points that I would sure like to learn more about, and that has to do kind of former Tualatin Valley Fire Chief Jeff Johnson kind of enlightened me about, and you've touched on it, kind of what you can do ahead of time as far as defensible space, as he describes, hardy plank siding, which is a concrete type board, having metal roofs, double wall drywall on exposed sides, and in some of the major fires that he saw, that made a difference in the homes that actually survived. Some pretty significant burns. So I think that, again, I want to make sure we kind of got a lot of input on that, and that's just really from conversation with some of the fire personnel, but I think that can make a difference. So with that being said, I think we're close to a motion on this. Would someone like to make a motion?
I move to direct staff to draft ZDO amendments to repeal the general regulations for unmapped fire hazard areas and rely on other ZDO standards.
Second.
All right, ladies, again, thank you. Commissioner Helm has moved to direct staff to draft ZDO amendments to repeal the general regulations for the unmapped fire hazard areas and to rely on other ZDO standards. Commissioner Schrader has seconded that. Any further discussion? Seeing none, clerk, would you please call the poll for us?
Commissioner West.
Aye.
Commissioner Savas.
Aye.
Commissioner Helm.
Aye.
Commissioner Schrader.
Aye.
Mr. Chair.
Aye, and we're moving on to the last one, the tree protection.
They just don't get any easier, honestly, as we move through this.
You saved the best for last.
I guess maybe the easy part about this one is that staff has not identified really any legal requirement related to these regulations. They're not part of our Goal 5 protected inventories. It's not, I don't think it's something where the state said you have to do this. So I'm a little less, I've said that now, I've of course have jinxed myself, but I don't think that we have to worry really about that aspect of it. Having said that, communities feel pretty strongly about their tree canopy, and so I don't want to imply that repealing our tree regulations is going to be without concern. The issue with our tree regulations is that they are very clearly not clear and objective, and so currently staff is not able to apply them to housing developments anyway. And I don't believe there's a legal requirement to replace them with something else. And so really the question is, the minimum is we can repeal. The minimum is to repeal them for housing. You could leave them in place for other types of development. So if somebody's building a school or a commercial development or something that isn't housing, we can leave them in place. They primarily apply in the urban area. We're very restricted from regulating tree removal in the rural areas because of the Forest Practices Act. And commercial forestry is kind of allowed out there, so we don't have a lot of regulatory authority out in the rural areas. The county did consider doing what I'll call kind of a city-style tree ordinance in 2010. It did not go well. Let's just leave it at that. Did not go well. And in the end, the board did adopt, I'll call it, I think it's safe to say it was a disincentive to developers sort of clear cutting the property, then coming in and by that point being unable to preserve any of their trees. So that was sort of the compromise, and the more comprehensive tree ordinance was not adopted at that time. There are certainly some of our urban communities and CPOs that feel very strongly about their tree canopy, so I do expect that you'll probably hear some folks advocating for adopting new standards. I do think it's not something we can probably take on in the next year with this project. I think it would be a really big stretch. It doesn't mean you can't direct us to do that, of course, but I'm concerned about resources on that. So again, the minimum requirement is to repeal the upland tree. And again, this doesn't affect stream buffers. This is upland tree, away from that river buffer or stream buffer. Repeal the upland tree protection regulations for housing development. That's the minimum. And then you could alternatively repeal those regulations for all development, or you could direct us to develop clear and objective upland tree protection regulations, either by expanding the scope of ZDO 290 or through a subsequent project. And staff's recommendation is that you repeal the tree regulations for housing and go ahead and leave the discretionary standards in place for other types of development.
All right, thank you. Commissioner West.
So if an individual in an unincorporated Clackamas County has a huge tree, it's not super healthy, do they currently have to come to the county for a permit to remove this tree?
Generally not. If it's a tree that was required to be preserved as part of a development application in the past. So
Like a heritage tree, like in Villaball, we have all these huge
Sure.
natural oak.
Could be
that
something like
that
that,
are native.
right,
Okay.
where it was required to be preserved, or if it's in that buffer, that water quality type buffer, then they have to at least bring us evidence that it is in fact dangerous, diseased, that sort of thing. But otherwise, if it's outside that, those protected areas, then no, we don't require them to come to us.
So we would only regulate street trees?
We require street trees now. We didn't, for years and years, so there's a lot of streets that don't have them. But yes, we have planter strip requirements, and where those trees are removed, they are supposed to be replaced. It's not a high priority code enforcement item for us, but technically, yes.
So the effort that Jennifer, 2 years? Was it a year and a half? I know,
It was
PTSD.
a really long time.
It was a long, passionate discussion.
About two, probably
And I'm not devaluing that discussion with that statement, but it was a long, long discussion. And the results of that came in, this punitive approach came. And so basically it was, hey, if you're a developer and you go out there, and I'm gonna get this wrong because I used to be a planner, but I'm not a planner anymore, but and you say, just clear cut the entire site. You had to wait a certain amount of time, I believe, until you could come in for development. So it basically impacted your ability to develop. So the thought was, and the hope was, you'd come to the table and have a more collective dialogue regarding, and that's kind of where the board at the time kind of landed the plane on that particular topic. But we don't have any specific, unlike a lot of the city jurisdictions that have, very, very specific requirements. Like Oswego has very restrictive
Portland does.
requirements about what you can cut, what you can't, what you need to cut. Like you said, Jennifer explained the fact that we don't have a lot of requirements for that unless it was a conditioned approval component.
Thank you for that. Do we ever talk about, not a lot of restrictions, but at least maybe around the type of trees that are planted, appropriate? So you could plant on private property, but then it starts to buckle the sidewalks because you planted a tree that wasn't necessarily appropriate for that space. It caused harm to public sidewalks or streets, or it's really not a great species that it does well for the environment here. There's some species, I know that Friends of Trees has a whole list, or the city of Portland has a whole list, not that we want to be like Portland at all, but they have a whole list of trees that you can choose from that are appropriate for the climate and for the region. Do we ever say, yeah, you can plant, we love trees, we don't want to get in your way, but please stay in this lane and please make sure you're getting the right size and anything like that?
So we do for street trees. We have adopted street tree lists based on the width of the planter strip that are administered through our engineering department when they're doing the road improvement plans or permitting. We do not have requirements for what people can plant just sort of generally on their private property. Again, if it's some sort of a mitigation planting, like related to a wetland or a stream, then there are limits in terms of what type of vegetation. But just generally, if it's my suburban backyard, for instance, or even my front yard, we do not have anything that tells people what they have to plant, currently.
Okay, thank you.
Great. Commissioner Helm.
So I think we might have been, we had PTSD from the same time period, because when the city of Damascus formed and we were trying to implement a tree ordinance, it took 3 years. And many, many council meetings absolutely filled with people who would yell at us that you can't tell me I can't cut my trees. And what we were trying to do was have some rules for when development happened, right? We're not saying you can't do this right now. It's in anticipation of the development that never happened. But I will say that I learned a lot. We had on council a forester, and I learned a lot during that process. And my hope would be that developers, and rather than come in and take down every single tree for their development, they leave some, because the trees have more value standing than not. And after we shouldn't have done this, but we used Happy Valley as our example, because we saw every hillside, just every tree was removed from every hillside there. And that's not what we wanted. We wanted some of our trees preserved. So I kind of have a little bit of pain here saying removing it for housing development, because I'm hoping developers will learn that there's a value in leaving some of those older trees on properties, and they work well with newer neighborhoods. You can leave some of the older ones if they're healthy, and they have neighbors, right? They have neighbor trees that they stand together and protect one another, not one single tree out there all by itself. But yeah, it's a tough conversation to have with people, and I have a little bit of heartburn removing all of them, so.
Yeah, I mean, I don't disagree from a personal or professional perspective that urban tree canopy is a good thing. I think the challenge, just what we witnessed 15 years ago with the difficulty of trying to adopt standards, it was just surprisingly difficult. And to make them clear and objective, it's like which trees, how many, what size, where do I measure from, how many can I cut, how do I decide, and all the things. It's challenging. So not that it can't be done, but it's challenging.
And that's exactly what we did. We did it based on how far from the ground and what was the diameter of the stump that was. No, we did it based on all of that. It was down to and it was painful, and I'd say I think we did get it passed eventually, but it didn't matter in the end. So there you go.
So one of the things that drives the discussion around the preservation of vegetation on lots is the size of the project and the grading associated with the project. And so I think you've really got to think about, especially like in areas that are, when I'll harken back to like the 80s when we were blowing up. I mean, we had a couple hundred lot subdivisions we were rolling through. We had projects like Windswept Waters that were coming in, big, huge greenfield projects where they're going out there and they're scraping the entire site. And I don't want to ever come across to say the fact that we're not going to have larger projects again, because we've had one here recently. We have one that's near and dear to Commissioner Savis's heart and his local community that had some impact with some trees that are on there. But the development type matters. So for the smaller developments, which are one or two, there's a little bit more latitude and feasibility and viability or redevelopment of a lot. It's a little more possible for the preservation. And we tend to see more of that development now than we do kind of this large scale 300 or 400 lot projects. Yeah, I'm not sure. Those of you who have lived here for a while, my phone blew off the hook when you're driving down 205 and you looked up at Happy Valley and that huge subdivision was just scoured the entire, and that's because it's the topography and the slope and the grading that's got to occur to make the lots buildable. So just something to, it's not going to alleviate the problem, but it's something that just kind of, our development type has kind of changed a little bit for the most part, so.
All right, thank you. Commissioner Savis.
Yeah, I think we've all, a number of us have lived through this for decades, right? I mean, I remember in '97 when I first got involved locally and development was happening, and the people that were advocating for tree ordinances at the time, I mean, back in '97, and thou shalt not cut these trees. These are old growth trees, or these are trees that are established. And it has typically been, the discussion, I would say, not always, but it's typically been about the established tree canopy, right? Whether it's urban or rural. And in my area, you have people that, are environmentally minded, when it comes to whether it's climate or whether it's housing or whether it is the tree canopy, all these things we need to do, smart growth. And I find myself listening to audiences that are conflicted, big time. The same people that are arguing that we need, we need to change the densities from, R20 or R12 or R10, and we need to reduce that down to 45 or 50-something units per acre, are the same people that don't want to cut the trees. I said, well, if you get that, look out the window, right? Or look at an example. And in order to build that density, all the trees on this property are gone. There's no way to get there. And so as they need to try to reconcile that and being through all the fights, my gosh. But I find it that it's a no-win. It's never been able to be clearly defined from that community or those communities as to where that balance is. And Oak Grove has been used as this ideal urban tree canopy. And why are you allowing all these developments to happen? Well, we can't turn away someone who wants to apply to build something, whether it's something modest or it's high density. And I've been watching around my neighborhood, I mean, not my exact neighborhood, but nearby, the trees just one at a time just gone. And I love my trees, right? I don't have as, I don't have as many trees as some other properties, but I don't have a huge property. But nonetheless, the canopy is disappearing. The mandates are to build the housing. The mandates don't disregard or don't really respect, the tree canopy or the call for that. It's about building the housing at the end of the day. And if you look at the housing standards, it's higher density, so therefore it's less trees. All to say that I don't, when we say except for housing, I mean, to me, it's, that's where that's where most of the trees are being cut down, is because of housing. So I don't see that, repeal the upland tree protection regulations for housing development. I'm not saying that's not enough. I'm not saying it's enough. All I'm saying is that I don't think that's going to accomplish what the advocacy wants to see or hear, but yet that conflicts with the state mandate to build housing. So we're stuck in this horrible spot, and I just go back to how much friction and heat took place with that Jennings Lodge Evangelical Retreat Center, when there was over 300 something old growth trees, not all old growth, but a pretty significant stand, and it's gone. And what's there today? Housing. And so that was an extremely painful thing, and I don't know how we grapple with this, because what standards or regulations are we going to comply with? The environmental ones, the mandate to build housing, or the mandate for density? Which ones do we abide by? I just need help, because I don't know what to do here.
It's challenging. I mean, I think the pendulum has clearly swung toward the housing right now. That doesn't mean it's going to stay that way, but that's how it is now. And the state isn't telling us that we can't have tree codes. They've amended the law that I think already told us they had to be clear and objective to make it even more explicit that tree codes have to be clear and objective. They did do that recently. There's no doubt they have to be clear and objective. But it isn't to say we can't try to do something. If that's the will of the commission, we can dust off what we had drafted. It still exists, what we drafted before, and see if there's parts of that or what Damascus adopted, that we can take some things from. And if you would like us to do that, we'll certainly look at it.
So as I understand it today, if you have a lot and you just decide to arbitrarily clear cut it, right? You still, today, the way the code's written, you can't build for 5 years. There's a 5-year moratorium. Is that right?
Yes, and then that won't make sense if we repeal, because there'll be no requirement to save it. The whole idea was make them keep it so they have to come in, and then we can try to get them to preserve some of it consistent with their development. But once we don't have regulations that make you save it at development, that won't matter either. So they kind of go together. They go hand in hand.
Yeah. There's been this call like, Commissioner, you don't have a tree canopy in urban collections. Well, actually, in unincorporated, we do. That's kind of it, right? I don't know what the other requirement is other than, we don't have a dimensional one like the city of Lake Oswego does, for example. It's just literally you can't clear cut.
The problem, yeah, that's the disincentive piece that was adopted. Beyond that, we have some very general, and that's the problem, standards that talk about saving significant clumps or groves of trees, but we don't define what significant is. And it's, again, if it's feasible, if it's consistent with the development, and so it's pretty difficult to make people preserve. But historically, going back to like Dan's talking about the go-go 90s when they were subdividing all kinds of things, we did require developers to save some trees. That was able to be done. But now we just have regulations we can't use.
All right, thank you. Commissioner West.
A little bit of experience with this policy-wise, being a former Wilsonville City Councilor. They have the Sterling rating for their tree canopy, super proud of it. I live in the neighborhood Villebois, and that is one of the best neighborhoods in Clackamas County to live in because of how it was designed. You feel like you also live in a park, but it has housing types for everybody across the spectrum. And we preserved a lot of heritage trees, white oak particularly. We have 10 specific groves in Wilsonville that we have preserved. We have old growth Douglas fir. We have made a conscious effort to have a very well-maintained, good tree canopy. It also was one of the fastest growing cities in the entire state over the last couple decades, so development didn't stop because we preserved trees. In Oregon, we talk about caring about climate issues, but one of the best ways to sequester carbon is through trees. It's actually quite affordable and effective, and it's a much better way to do it than a lot of these loony ideas coming out of Salem. We can just take care of the existing tree canopy, and we can help deal with the carbon issue. It helps with pollution. It helps with wildlife. We have a tree just outside our house, and I get to look out my back door right here in Villebois, and I get to see the owls and wildlife. And that is part of the character that we care about in Oregon. I don't understand how we have to cut down heritage trees or specific species, and that means we're sacrificing housing. There's no evidence of that. There's zero evidence of that. But we can be pragmatic. We can have maybe a percentage of our Clackamas County area preserved for a canopy that benefits us for generations. We shouldn't be cutting down these old trees and clear cutting. I mean, I just have no appetite to believe that we have to sacrifice economic development and then just cut down all of the old growth important heritage trees in a community. I think Clackamas County has examples where we can do this pragmatically. We don't have to look like Wilsonville exactly or Lake Oswego, but I don't support this. I mean, I just don't think that this is the type of community I'd want to live in. I think Happy Valley is wonderful, but you gave a fantastic example about how a whole hillside was cleared off, and there was opportunities to protect a lot of special assets and environmental opportunities in Happy Valley when it was developed. So I'm not going to support this. I'm a no vote, but I think that we can look at other communities around here, and we can have both. We can have environmentally friendly, good urban habitat, tree canopies, and housing. And I don't think it's our trees that are stopping the housing from being developed.
So do you want to do C? Is that what you're saying, or just vote
I mean,
no
we
on
have to see
A?
what the motion is. But
I know, that's,
yeah.
I'm just asking.
I would be open to C, but
Do you want to do A or C? A, you're saying absolutely not.
I think C is going to be the
And
alternate.
C would open up the Pandora's box.
It's opens it for options.
Well, okay.
The
I'll go
language
with
that I think might need to be added. And can I just make
Yes, I wanted
one
to
more
go to you
comment?
too, yes.
Is that I find the closer you get to a tree ordinance, the faster people cut down their trees. Because they hurry and cut them down before the ordinance
True.
goes into effect. So we found that people were just clear cutting their properties in anticipation of this tree ordinance that we were doing, which was to prevent it. So it totally backfired. So I agree. I don't think we have to sacrifice one for the other. I think that, again, developers are learning that trees have a lot of value and that we should be keeping some of the really special ones. And not all the scrub trees. I mean, there's a lot of scrub trees out there. So I don't know if C is the answer. Is that the right answer here for the expanding the scope of the current project or through a subsequent project? We just left the door open, correct? That's what C
Yeah,
does.
seize the option, and ultimately, we'll be back to talk to you, because there'll be a lot of questions about scope. Is this just for new new development coming in to subdivide? Is it people building single-family houses? Is it the trees that are on existing? Like, there'll be a lot of policy questions to answer about the scope.
Commissioner Schrader.
Oh, I just wanted to say that, I will just mention the tree ordinance in Lake Oswego, everybody loves it. But that's Lake Oswego. And the other thing, though, that I always worry about is fire mitigation. Okay, because it's a heavy canopy, so.
All right, Commissioner Savas.
Well, in a way, when I say this, I know it's going to be problematic. I get that, but I don't think there's any way we're going to avoid the problems this is going to create. So I just think that what we ought to do, and some of the emails I read that we received on today was all around the lines of, we can't speak to you, under this work session, there's no public comment, which I think this one here almost commands some degree. I mean, and it's not that it has to be done in a way that it's going to be one department or another. To me, it's more, how do we get, because again, we're responding to state. This is like a top down from the state that we got to make all these changes. And I think that I don't want the narrative to run away that we're doing this somehow independently. So I think it almost commands, frankly, whether it's a town hall or a public session, to say, by the way, Clackamas County is facing these state mandates to, do this. And we also have a stamp mandate to build housing, and just lay it out there, as opposed to arbitrarily be seen or subject ourselves that we're just doing this independently. And I think that might be I don't want a false narrative to run away that we're just doing this independently. And give our staff, we'll say shelter, but cover, right? Because they're going to take the heat for it. We're going to take heat for it no matter what. That's our job. But I just don't want people to think that we're just arbitrarily doing this.
All right, Commissioner West.
Everybody should go home today and watch the Lorax. I'm just kidding. Is there a state mandate to do it this way right now? I guess that's my question, is I know that some of this.
We love being up here just talking about it, yeah.
Yeah.
No, yeah, there is.
No, there's a state mandate for us to allow to, just
No, there's
remove upland tree protections?
No, there's a state mandate that we can't apply the standards we have because they're not clear and objective. So to protect trees, we would need to adopt different regulations than we currently have. That's what we need to do.
It's our current coding.
Our current code
Thank
doesn't
you.
work.
Okay, so we need,
Yeah.
well, I'm all about it being very clear and precise, and maybe we should do that, but I just literally, fundamentally, I think it's ludicrous that somehow we're going to get more housing if we allow just, unmitigated cutting of trees on property and getting rid of trees that have been around since, the Oregon Trail. I'm just not interested in that, and I just think that is not true.
All right. Anybody willing to make a motion? Not even sure which one it would be.
Chair, I move that we direct staff to draft ZDO amendments to develop clear and objective upland tree protection regulations, either by expanding the scope of the current project or through a subsequent project.
Second.
All right. So Commissioner West has made a motion to direct staff to draft ZDO amendments to develop clear and objective upland tree protection regulations, either by expanding the scope of the current project or through a subsequent project. It's been seconded by Commissioner Helm. Any further discussion? All right, seeing none. Going once? Okay, go ahead, Andrew.
Commissioner Schrader.
Aye.
Commissioner Savas.
I'm not there. I'm not a yes at this point. I mean, I think that we need to approach this one differently.
Can we go to discussion then? Or do you?
we can step back for
Chair, can we go,
point of order.
point of order?
You have to finish the vote. You called for the vote.
I'm sorry, Commissioner Savas, it was not clear to me. Could you repeat your vote?
My vote was, I'm not ready at this time, so that's a no.
Commissioner Helm,
Aye.
Commissioner West,
Aye.
Mr. Chair.
Aye.
Motion passes 4-1, Mr. Chair.
So many long pauses today.
I know, that was a tough one. I'm trying to figure the best direction. I mean, I think
So,
that,
to Chair, can I just put something on the table?
yeah, of
I mean,
course.
I'm not looking to ask that we do something today, but I just want to just throw out the idea again that I just kind of talked about earlier, is kind of lay this out to the public in a way that, whether it's a town hall or a notice, because this will be misunderstood, period. So do you want to get in front of it now, or do you want to wait for the backlash later? So I'm just saying that whether there's interest in how we approach this, and maybe, I want to give staff cover. I don't want to have them suggest something, but, ultimately, staff will be in front of us when we have a town hall or something like this, if we do indeed lay out the case where we're kind of stuck.
So the public involvement for the project as a whole, not specifically for trees, but this entire project, does include, I believe it's 2 online town halls that the consultants are going to help facilitate, that will involve some, outreach to people and the ability to come and ask staff questions and that kind of thing. So you may be envisioning something that's more, central to you or people coming to speak to you, but I did want you to know that at least that will happen as part of this project.
Yeah. Just putting that out there.
All right. Well, go ahead, Commissioner.
Commissioner's office, do you have an idea, about how I'm open to supporting public comment on this issue and engagement and speaking to us as commissioners. I mean, they can email us, call us, but something, maybe a specific meeting beyond with the consultant online. With your experience, what do you think would be good?
Well, I don't think it's urgent, but I think that we need to somehow share with the public what we're up against here on this and get their input. And so they clearly understand that, I think it's conflicting state policies, right? That have to reconcile itself, and yet we are simply going to try to follow as best we can, some middle ground in there. But to me, I think people need to understand this. This is a constant, I'm sure you're all having it too. I'm not alone up here.
Yeah.
We're all having these conflicts where we talk to people and they say, geez, Commissioner, I just found out that property across the street from me, and it's a low density neighborhood, is that people just bought it, want to build a huge little subdivision on it, right? And I bought this property years ago. It's been in my family for whatever, how many generations, and suddenly my low density neighborhood is now going to have this change. How did that happen?
Yeah.
Right? And by the way, all the trees that are there are going to be gone.
Yeah.
Every one of them. There's no small trees on this property.
Yeah.
So I think that staff is going to be coming back with information. I mean, this is a step forward where we have a lot more questions and you have a lot more work to do. So this will be coming back to us, and I think at that time we can also make some modification or changes. This isn't set in stone at this point. So with that being said, I appreciate the conversation, everybody. I think each one of us are kind of struggling, trying to find that happy medium in there. So if there's nothing else with you, Gary, I'm going to conclude our business meeting for the day, and a big thanks to you and your staff. You guys did a great job. Thank you.